ado, it is my extreme pleasure to introduce a distinguished alumnus from this school. A bit of information: the Foundation for Davis County Public Schools each year chooses two people, one from your school and one from Apollo. And I get the great opportunity today to present Loretta to you. I will tell you that she has achieved great height. You are going to be absolutely swayed and blown away by her travels, her talk, her discussion. Give you a little bit of a background. As Mr. Mason said, a graduate in '73, and she went on to the University of Kentucky, where she majored in law. She went further then to Georgetown University in Washington. And a couple of names that I think that you will find interesting: the late, great U.S. Senator Wendell Ford, who left us about a year ago almost. She worked for him. She was a liaison also in the White House. She was in charge of lots of governmental relations in many areas. Ultimately took a position with Boeing International and achieved great heights, and became a vice president of international relations and multiple other things that she will talk about. It is so exciting for me to share with you this wonderful person who has achieved greatness, and she comes from greatness because she has three siblings, all of whom graduated, correct me, Dr. Dunn, from Davis County. And of course, her father, Dr. John Dunn, a great educator who once was my principal at the old Davis County Junior High, and he was here at Davis County High School also as an assistant principal. And the last most important thing, he was a member of the Davis County Board of Education. So ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure for you to welcome Loretta Dunn Schmitzer.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Yes. I'm pretty loud. We think the battery might be down, but we'll try. Is that good? Well, thank you guys for showing up. I don't know how much choice you had, but I appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you today. As you can see, I graduated 42 years ago from Davis County High School, and I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about some of the things that have happened to me along the way since I left here. I know you guys are going to be graduating this year as your senior year. And I want to just ask you to move to that first slide. So starting out, I was born and raised in Owensboro. I spent my first 17 years here. But before I get too started in my really sad life story, I read a USA Today poll just last week, and it asked, they did a survey, and they asked 22,000 high school seniors around the country, how are you feeling in school today? And 39% said they were feeling tired, 28% said they were feeling stressed, 26% said they were feeling bored, and 5% said they were happy. So I'll do my best not to make you tired or stress you out. I can't promise you you won't be bored, but I hope you'll be happy by the time we finish. As Ms. Miller said, my dad was principal at the middle school for many, many years. Some of your parents probably went to school there when he was principal. Before video games, before computers, before more than 3 network channels on your television, about all you could do in Owensboro was either hang out in the street and play kickball or go to the public library and read books, and that's pretty much what I did. I was a total bookworm nerd, spent all my time in the public library, read everything I could get my hands on. I also did have some really great teachers who inspired me, and we still have a lot of really good teachers here. I had a lot of trouble. I started school early at the age of 5, and it took me over a year to learn to read. And so I had a second grade teacher who realized that I didn't know how to read, and she really spent a lot of time with me trying to catch me up to a second grade level. And then in middle school, you know those awkward kind of preteen years when you're in middle school, I had a homeroom teacher who took a real interest in me and tried to help me through that awkward phase. And then in high school, I was a really bad student. I skipped a lot of class, I didn't prepare, I wasn't very respectful to a lot of my teachers, and in spite of all that, I had some really nice teachers who tried to help me understand how I could behave better and how I could perform better and to help prepare me for college. And finally, a little bit of that took. But all along my early years here, I was fascinated with other countries and with history, ancient history, current contemporary history, modern history. So I spent a lot of time reading about other countries and about countries in the past. And the one thing I learned from all of that is the most important thing you can do in high school is just go to class, just show up. Next slide, 70% of success is just showing up. So learn from my mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and this is one of them. The other thing I wanted to talk about is asking stupid questions. I was always one of those students who was afraid to ask questions in class because I thought surely everybody else understands what the teacher's talking about, but not me. And it turns out, as you get older, no, everybody had the same questions. They were also either too bored, too stressed, or too tired to ask the questions. So just go on and ask them. And I'm going to talk about an experience I had in my very first job where I didn't ask any questions and it was a complete failure of what I was trying to accomplish. Read the textbook if you can. Talk to your teachers when you go to college or vocational school or you start at a job. Ask questions. Talk to them. If you're flailing, like I was in calculus in my first year of college, go and beg for assistance. Most teachers really want to help. And I think that's really important to just express that you don't know what you're doing and to ask for help. The other thing I'll tell you about working in the international field, and I did that for the last 20 years, is something I was never able to do. I have no proficiency in foreign language. I spent 4 years at DCHS taking German, and I know one word. And 3 years in college taking German. I know one word. But if you have the talent for a foreign language, as many foreign languages you can learn them. It will really help you in the job market in the future. The Wall Street Journal reported that the top 2 languages for employability, Mandarin and Spanish. So if there's any way you can learn a foreign language, that would be a tremendous asset for you on your resume as you go out to look for a job. And then the last thing is get out of here. Escape, travel, experience other cultures. It's like, as I was telling Mrs. Miller before I started, it's like getting another college education. I had a place in Belize, which is a little country tucked under Mexico in Central America, for about 10 years. And I learned so much about Mayan culture, about the Belizean way of life, things I would never have known had I not lived there periodically over those 10 years. About 15 years ago, I had an opportunity to go to Antarctica on an old Russian icebreaker. And this is before Antarctica had started to melt. And it was a fascinating experience to go to a place where there are no people. You walk among penguins, they don't know to be afraid of you, they don't know, they see people periodically. You're not allowed to live in Antarctica, you can only visit. We got stuck in an iceberg. We had to back out and try a different approach. It was an unbelievable learning experience. And just last month, we went to Zambia. And I don't know if you guys know a lot about Zambia, but it's right in the middle of Africa. It's surrounded by a lot of really bad guys. Rwanda, the Congo, some really dangerous places. And Zambia is this little country that is peaceful as can be. It's never had any civil wars Since independence, it's had stable governments, free elections, free press. It has the second most beautiful waterfall in the world called Victoria Falls. I knew none of this before I showed up. And you can see every animal you ever want to see on a safari in Zambia. And that's the kind of thing that you're not really going to learn in a library or in a textbook. You're only going to learn it if you can go there. So I really encourage you guys, as soon as you can, scrape together your pennies and get out of here. Visit other countries. I also went to college at UK. I went to law school at UK. And what I learned at college is enjoy yourself, socialize, meet people you wouldn't normally meet. Go outside your comfort zone. Take classes that you don't think you'd be interested in, and you might surprise yourself and find an area of study that you never would have guessed would be of interest to you. I think about at least half of college is learning to be independent and learning to make friends on your own without your family and friends network from Owensboro here to help you. And intern. I did a lot of internships, and I found they were really helpful in getting me used to the work world, but also helping me see what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And then law school, what can I say? It's boring. It's full of lawyers. I did it because I thought I wanted to be, Perry Mason or, some big trial lawyer, and it ended up, I found law to be actually pretty boring and pretty stressful. So when I was getting ready to graduate from UK Law School in 1979, I didn't have a job, and I was kind of panicked about that. And I heard, maybe from my dad, that Senator Wendell Ford from Owensboro might have a job. So I called, and we talked on the phone, and he offered me a job. And I was like, wow, this is great. I'm going to get to go live in Washington, D.C. I didn't even ask how much the job paid. I was just too excited, so I said, yes, absolutely, I can start next week. I had to call back and find out what the salary was. And when they told me it was $13,000, I felt like I'd won the lottery. This is back in 1979. And I had no idea how expensive it was to live in D.C. But basically, this bought me like a couch in somebody's house. But I really did enjoy working on the committee. It was the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. It covered a lot of different areas, a lot of different industries, the rail industry, the airline industry, many different industries. I started as the most junior person. I think I was 23 years old, just out of law school, and so I got all the, cats and dogs that nobody else wanted to do. I worked on regulating funeral homes, which is really interesting. I worked on extending daylight savings time, which we're going to experience tomorrow, and cigarette labeling. Believe it or not, there was a time when there were no labels on cigarette packages. I worked on that. And what I learned from this job, my first day on the job, I reported to my boss, who was a senior guy on the committee staff. He gave me a list of people's names and phone numbers and said, hey, we're doing a hearing on legislative veto in 6 weeks. Will you call all these people? We need 3 witnesses on one side and 3 witnesses on the other. So I said, okay. I take the list from him. I've never been to a hearing in my life. I have no idea what he's talking about. I don't know what legislative veto is. I've never heard of this issue. I don't know any of the people whose names are on this list. So I just called the first one. The first one is Tito Scalia. And I don't know how many of you are interested in the Supreme Court, but he was a professor at the University of Chicago. And I called him up and I said, Professor Scalia, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to be a witness before the committee on this issue of legislative veto on September 10th at 9 a.m. And he starts asking me a bunch of questions. Who will be there? What are the members and what are their positions on the issue? Where is the legislation on this issue pending right now? He's asking me all the ins and outs. I know nothing. And I have to keep saying, oh, I'm not sure, I'll have to check, I'm not sure, I'll have to check. Finally, I just said, Professor Scalia, I have to tell you, it's my first day on the job. I don't know what legislative veto is. I don't understand the issue. I've never heard of it before. And I was given your name and your phone number and told to call you to ask if you'd be a witness. And you clearly know way more about this subject than I do. He then patiently spent 30 minutes explaining all of the parameters of this issue to me. Very kind, very nice, and very easy to understand. About 3 years later, 4 years later, Ronald Reagan nominated Tino Scalia to be a justice on the Supreme Court. And Justice Antonin Scalia has been a prominent, I think he's the longest serving Supreme Court justice. He's a very prominent and well thought of conservative on the court. And I will never forget the lesson I learned that day is don't try to pretend like you know something when you know nothing. Just ask questions. People will help you. If you tell them you don't understand or you don't know something, they will explain it to you. So I thought that was a very valuable lesson from a very, very smart man. My next job, so I spent 13 years on the committee. I did a lot of different things. I ended up doing international trade, which I went to Georgetown. I got a master's in international trade. It was really interesting. I love imports and exports. I love all those issues. I came home to Owensboro for a brief period in '92. I dragged my 5-year-old with me, and we canvassed and helped run the Clinton Gore campaign in '92. It was kind of a hopeless cause here in Owensboro, but we had a lot of fun doing it. And the day after the election, I packed up my 5-year-old and went back to D.C. and got a call from a woman who was an executive at Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. And she said, hey, I'm a friend of Al Gore's, and he's asked me to run the competitiveness transition team for the new administration. And for you guys who don't know, when you move from one president to another, there's a period of time after the election where a team is assembled and given office space to prepare briefing books for the new people coming in so that they don't come in without any information. And so I said, I would love to do it. And she said, well, you have to work like from Thanksgiving to Christmas, kind of like 24/7. But once Christmas hits, you're done. And so we did that. It was a load of fun. I met a lot of people. And I use this as an example of any opportunities like that come along your way, just take them. Don't think twice. It's a lot of work, but it was a lot of reward at the end of the day. Then I got a call right after the beginning of the year when the administration came in. President Clinton had named Ron Brown as the first black Secretary of Commerce. And he called and asked if I would help him fill all the political jobs at Commerce. We had about 250 political jobs. They range from like secretarial jobs all the way up to Deputy Secretary of Commerce. And so I did that for 6 months. And here's what you find out filling political jobs in a new administration. If your party's been out of power for 12 years, there's about 100,000 people who want a job. And they think they deserve one too. And 99.9% of those people aren't going to get a job. And the other 0.01 that are going to get a job, they're not going to get the job they feel they're entitled to. They're going to get a job less than the one they thought they deserved. So everyone hates you. I ended up with people stuffing resumes in my home mailbox, people calling me at home at night. We did literally for 250 jobs, probably 2,000 interviews. And at the end of the day, someone always ends up with a house cleaner who is an undocumented alien and can't get confirmed by the Senate anyway. But it was a very interesting experience. I will never do it again, but it was a really interesting experience. At the end of that, President Clinton nominated me to be Assistant Secretary of Legislative Affairs and Intergovernmental Affairs at Commerce, which is basically just a liaison between the Department of Commerce and mayors and governors and Congress. And that job is basically just listening to people complain about things that people have done at the Commerce Department that have impacted their district. And a few positive things as well. I love the job, by the way. And by the end of the 2 years into it, I was also acting as Chief of Staff in the department. The department has about 30,000 people. They're all over the world. We do everything from running the Hurricane Center to economic development grants to international trade to running the census every 10 years. It's a big sort of conglomerate of divisions within the department. And I really learned a lot beyond international trade, which is an issue I've worked on for many years. I left in '95 to go to the private sector. And about 9 months later, Secretary Brown and about 20 of my friends died in a plane crash. They were on a trade mission to Croatia, and their plane ran into a mountain, and they all died. It was a very tragic time. He's the first Secretary of Commerce killed in the line of duty in the history of the United States. And I miss him to this day. My first private sector job. I left government. I thought I'd try my hand at the private sector. I was going to be a lobbyist. I'm sure you all heard lobbyists are terrible. If anybody's watched any Republican or Democratic debates, you'll know that lobbyists is a dirty word. But that's what I was going to do. I showed up for work. I was supposed to be running the Washington office of a company called Hughes Electronics. I'm assuming, have any of you guys heard of Howard Hughes, crazy Howard Hughes? He set up this company in the 40s, but you're going to know it for something much more recent than that. I show up for work, and it turns out the guy running the office, no one had told him that I was going to be running, that he was going to be leaving, and I was going to be running the office. So we spent 9 months together in a very tense and stressful situation until he finally did retire. But it was great fun because we were launching a new system called DirecTV. Nobody had ever run a satellite TV service before. No one thought it was, the cable companies kept telling us, you'll never make a dime. This is a terrible business. Don't get in it. The networks didn't want to share their content with us. It was a really fascinating time, setting up a whole new business like that and trying to figure out how to get customers, how to gain market share, how to deal with your competitors. I really enjoyed it. I worked for a visionary named Mike Armstrong, who went on to run AT&T. And when he left, once we had DirecTV launched and Mike had left, I started to lose a little bit of interest in the job and felt like it was time to move on. And about that time, Hughes sold about half of their business to Boeing. And this is when I learned my most valuable lesson, and that is, next slide, life is way more important than work. My husband was diagnosed, my first husband was diagnosed with a terminal illness at this time. And while we were completing the sale of Hughes to Boeing, he was dying. I had 5 sons who were devastated, and I spent most of that time on family medical leave trying to figure out how to get him better and how to make them okay. And I think of all the things that I learned over a 35-year career, this is the most important. Life isn't what happens to you when you're not at work. Your personal life is what gives life meaning. So work's important, school's important, but your relationships, your personal life is what really defines the quality of your life. So make sure that you work to live and you don't live to work. It took me to the age of 45 to figure this out, but I urge you to think about it as you move forward, as some of you start your working career this year. Don't neglect your family life for work. Work is great, and if you have a great job, it can be really fun, but it's not the end all. It's not why you're here. It's not the end all and be all of your life. So my last job, I started Boeing in 2001. Boeing makes airplanes. They also make military equipment, but mostly airplanes. When they bought Hughes, they had a huge Washington office. They had about 250 people. It's the largest Washington office of any company. They didn't really have a job for me, so I decided I was going to try to figure out a niche for myself, and I ended up working with our foreign customers. About half of our airline customers, you might have heard of Turkish Airlines. It's owned by the Turkish government. Saudi Airlines owned by the Saudi government. Air Thailand owned by the Thai government. About half of Boeing's customers are government owned. And when they have trouble with the Congress or with the executive branch, they want us to go to the Congress and to the executive branch and explain what good customers they are and how important the relationship is. That's what I did. I did that service for them. So I spent most of my time trying to educate decision makers on how important the commercial relationship with Air India, for example, was. I did a lot of human rights work, arms control, international trade. And I also had a chance to staff my favorite CEO, Jim McNerney, the CEO of Boeing, as he chaired the President's Export Council. And that council is 28 private sector CEOs who advise the meet several times a year at the White House and advise the President on how to make the U.S. more competitive. And that was a really fun assignment. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of like the last thing I did. I retired last year and really enjoyed that very last assignment. I always was looking for new things to do. So after about 35 years in government and in the private sector, on Capitol Hill and in the administration, I have to say, just work really hard. Compromise when you need to. That was the most valuable lesson I learned from Wendell Ford, who was a great compromiser and a great legislator. Read prodigiously, travel extensively, and ask questions all the time. Make a lot of mistakes. I made a million mistakes, and the big ones, the really big ones, I learned the most from, because you never want to make that mistake again. Always keep your focus on your friends and family, and try to collect great mentors along the way. I'm sure some of you all now have mentors. If you're a teacher, some teacher might be a mentor for you. I was lucky to have a bunch of really good ones. Senator Ford was my first one. Jay Rockefeller from West Virginia was another. Secretary Brown, President Clinton, and then Mike Armstrong and Jim McNerney here with me. I think it's really important to collect as many mentors as you can, because they've got valuable, valuable lessons to teach you as well. So you don't just learn from your mistakes, you can learn from their mistakes as well. I want to thank you for your attention. I'm happy. I don't know if anybody in this bigger crowd wants to ask a question, but you're welcome to ask a dumb or a really smart question if you want to. Don't be shy. Yes, ma'am.
How did you travel so much? Was that just for your job?
I did travel for my job. I traveled for my job quite a bit. And, you know, Boeing has customers, I think, in almost every country in the world. So I've got to travel a lot for my job, but I also traveled a lot personally as well. I traveled every chance I got. I think I've been to every continent, certainly not every country, but a lot of places. And I literally learned something new every time I went. Yes, ma'am.
What's your favorite memory with Wendell Ford?
Oh, this is really bad. Oh, this is really a big mistake. I was probably 2 months into the job. Okay, he was a really nice guy. I was probably 2 months into the job, and one of the jobs you do when you're really junior, which nobody else wants to do, is when members go to the floor and talk, I don't know if you ever noticed on C-SPAN, if anyone watches C-SPAN, I worry about you, but if you've ever watched it, there's a person down in the well that's actually saying their words into a tape recorder, and then they type it up, and it's called a congressional record. So one of your jobs, if you're very junior, because this is so boring, is you go down late at night, every night, and you correct the record. So what you're supposed to do is, like, if Wendell Ford used were, and he should have said are, you're supposed to correct that. And grammatical mistakes, right? Or if he says Macon, Georgia, but he meant Valdosta, you fix that. Oh, not me. No. He went on the floor, talked about some issue, told a long story about duck hunting, which was totally off topic. I took the whole thing out. And the problem, that's okay. I mean, he would have been maybe a little peeved at me. The problem was, the Courier-Journal printed that whole story, because the reporters were up in the gallery. And then they printed a story the following day that says, for some reason, his duck hunting story had mysteriously disappeared from the congressional record. Like it was some kind of scandal. So I go into work. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get fired. I probably should have been fired. I go in and I decide I'm going to go in on my hands and knees because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get fired. And I've been on the job a month or two. He said, Loretta, and this is where I learned this saying. He said, Loretta, we learn the most from the big mistakes we make. Just learn from it. Don't do it again. Don't remove my duck hunting stories. It will be fine. So that was a really nice story. He was a great boss. A really nice guy. Anybody else? All right. Well, listen, I'm happy to answer any questions you have if you want to ask anything afterwards. But I thanks for your attention. I appreciate it.